Hello and welcome to Real Chat with Kat, the podcast dedicated to igniting your entrepreneurial spirit and empowering you to conquer new horizons. In this podcast, we chat with inspiring entrepreneurs on their journey to success through some amazingly insightful and expansive conversations. These episodes thrive on thought-provoking chats where our guests fearlessly explore their path to success, sharing their experiences, failures, and triumphs. No topic is off limits as we deep dive into the talked about and not so talked about pieces it takes to build a business, overcome limiting beliefs, deal with personal struggles, and everything in between that shapes our lives and our businesses. I'm your host, Kat Polsinelli, creator and founder at The Lotus Effect, where we believe that success is not just about strategies and tactics, it's about cultivating a powerful mindset and creating customized business operations that align with you and your true purpose. Whether it's mastering time management, improving productivity, enhancing leadership skills, or simply fostering a growth-oriented mindset, we'll provide you with the tools and strategies to flourish in both your business and personal life. I'm so excited to have you join us today in this episode, so get ready to feel empowered and inspired as we learn together and from one another on how to rise above challenges, break through limitations, and unlock our full potential. Let's dive in. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining me today on this episode of Real Chat with Kat. I am so excited to have you here with me today. I have a phenomenal guest. I am so excited to have her. We have had so much fun. I've loved to watch her grow as well. So, Amy, thank you so much for being a part of the podcast today.
I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
You are so welcome. Oh, we had way too much fun before we even hopped on, you guys. I started telling her about my sharks. That's a whole nother topic of conversation. So as we dive in to talk about Amy, do us all a favor then and tell us, who you are, what it is that you do, and what got you into your space.
Amazing. So I'm an executive coach and workplace wellness trainer, and I focus on things like emotional intelligence. And I am a mom of three. I mean, there's so many hats, right? There's so many hats we wear, a list of things, but I'm really passionate about helping people to connect to their worthiness, to know that they are enough. I'm super passionate about connecting the dots in wellness, in work and life, and that our stress at work impacts our home life, and our home life stress impacts our work life, and all of these things impact our wellness. There's a lot of links here between things, and I get super jazzed up anytime I can talk about these topics.
I love this. And this is so up my alley, right? Because, I love talking about integrating all the pieces because I think that especially women, we're taught to try to compartmentalize, oh, you leave all your stuff at the door when you come to work and you're supposed to be this one person. But at the same time, I know, especially for me in the years that I was in corporate and stuff, it's so exhausting. It's so exhausting. And then if something comes up with your kids, which I swear always does, but if something comes up, you're in business mode and you're so focused on that this almost overstresses you to the point that it's not even worth it. And when it's I feel that when you can learn, and I heard this from a friend of mine, and I thought this was really cool. So I've stole it and it's become mine. If you can think of your life, including work, business, personal, everything as an orchestra, and you think of it in regards to not every single instrument is always playing at the same time, but sometimes the piano might have a solo or the violin, and then they come back together. I feel that is the direction we should really be paying attention to and kind of taking our lives so that when crap does come up, whether that's your kid is sick or you're supposed to be at a child's function and work pings you because there's an emergency, it's a little bit easier, I feel to handle it because you're already used to kind of okay, this is going to have to take precedent for a second, and this is going to have to take precedent. And you can create boundaries around that I think feel a lot better to us versus the ones that have kind of been put on us by society.
Yeah, I love what you're saying. There's a couple of things that are coming to mind. I love this idea of the orchestra. Love that. And I would add the layer that the orchestra lives within you and is accessible at any time. So
Mm,
it's recognizing that you already have the strengths, the skills, the tools. Certainly we all can up level in different places, but you are a complete, amazing, worthy, whole human already who has the ability to manage through these different challenges. And I love that when you realize that there's different pieces of you that get to come out, that's magical. And the other layer that I really liked is this awareness of prioritization. So being where you are, spending less time in the state of worrying about the future or dwelling on the past. Oh my goodness, I'm so excited. I'm knocking over my water. um, being where you are and knowing that you have the skill of prioritization. So when those things are coming at you, you can take the deep breath, lean into your wisdom, your knowledge, your capabilities, and say, okay, this has now taken over as the priority because of whatever that experience might be with your kid or the work ping or whatever. But having that clear mind and clear thinking to say, evaluate what is the priority for you, not based on other people's fires and other people's
mm.
emergencies. So even though you're maybe getting pinged while you're at the kids' recital, you're recognizing, okay, I'm going to be at the recital for 30 more minutes. Is this ping a fire that is absolutely required for me to put out right now, or could it wait 30 more minutes and then I'll go all the way in and take care of that thing? But it's that ability to recognize the prioritization muscle is accessible to you at all times.
I love that. I love the prioritization muscle. Like that's such a strong thing to remember. I feel like, especially, like me coming as a single parent for so long, I struggled with control. And so I don't know that prioritization was necessarily a thing. It was just like, how many things can I control to make sure that everything goes smoothly? Because I felt like if I had control over it, I could make sure everybody else was good. Right. When in reality, I was actually causing myself to have panic attacks and be completely stressed and drained and overwhelmed, which then, right, like you were saying earlier, it bleeds into how you talk to your kids. It bleeds into what you're doing at work because those emotions don't go away. And we aren't necessarily taught how to sit with them, deal with them, and then like let go of them. We're always on the go so much. It's like they just bleed into the next thing. And then we wonder why, like, I know my kids used to be like, what is your problem? Like, why are you so agitated? I didn't even do anything. And it was those moments where it was like, oh my gosh, like this has nothing to do with you. I am so sorry. Like, but I realized that, and it took years to realize that, like, the more that you actually relinquish the control and set boundaries and choose what you want to prioritize, the better control is. I don't know if that makes any sense
Mhm.
to anybody, but it was really weird for me to try to juggle so many things and hold on to stuff so tightly to make sure that everything was smooth. And then, like, once I was just like, it is what it is. I can't handle
Mhm.
this. I can't do that. I'll worry about this later. This is more of a priority now. Like, the amount of stress that just like decreased and the way that I'm able to handle stressful situations now, is completely different. Like, I'll give you an example. Last year, we had a huge scare with my oldest one. I got a phone call like out of the blue, and he's like, Mom, I had a motorcycle wreck. And I was like, okay, what happened? Obviously, you're talking to me. So we're okay. What happened? I think I broke my
Mhm.
foot. What? But it was like in that moment. And then the phone hung up, and I was like, okay, just wait a second. Let's see if he calls back. If not, I'm going to call him. I got a phone call right back. He was trying to explain, but I could hear the EMS person talking in the background. They were going to be taking him to the hospital. When I pinged his location, I'm like, he's an hour away from me. Okay, so here I can either stress and be like, oh my God, we have to get out the door. What are we going to do? I got to leave now. Or, are you okay? are you taken care of? Can I talk to the lady? Let me make sure
Mhm.
you're good, which I did. I knew he was going to the hospital. I knew he was handled. It was like, okay, what needs to be taken care of at home? What do I need to make sure is taken care of for my youngest one who's getting out of school? Let him know he's got to ride the bus. Mom can't pick you up. And then I can leave. Any other time, I can tell you that if my kid could have called me on the side of the road with like my tires popped, I would have like lost it, right? I
Mhm.
was so calm in that moment of chaos. Like it was so easy to be like, okay, this needs to be handled. This is taken care of. I know he's good. We're going to do this. Like just to be able to take things apart and be like, okay, and then this is what we're going to go do. Like
Mhm.
knowing myself beforehand and what would have happened. I was so proud of myself in that moment. And I actually made sure to reflect on that when I came home that evening. Like, I am so proud of myself at
Yeah.
how I handled that because normally I would have lost my shit. I'm just being honest. Like, I would have lost
Well,
it.
you know what I love about this is there's many layers that I love, but what I really love is that you took a moment to actually celebrate yourself and reflect on it and recognize that there has been growth in yourself. And I think often individuals brush over these really incredible moments of growth. We brush over
Mm-hmm.
them. We miss out on the celebration of it, the ownership of like, man, I am improving as a human. Like, yay me. We're missing out on that celebration. We're missing out on the reflection. And we're not then able to use that as positive fuel to move forward in our life when the next hard moment, challenging moment comes up because we've forgotten that we have proof that we have improved. I really honor you for taking that time to do that because it's like we make a bank in ourselves of all the things that we've, how you're saying in the past I would have been angry, I would have been freaking out, I would have like, right now you can't really say that anymore. You could say in the far, far past, I would have been freaking out. But now the next level version of me is a person who is calm. That's really important, right? Is
Mm-hmm.
that we're taking the moment to recognize in ourselves the growth that we are experiencing. So it's proof of like who we are now and not dwelling so much on who we used to be because, okay, that's great. But who are you now? Incredible. That's so great.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And I love that you brought this up about taking the moments to celebrate because
Mhm.
that is something that I really had to learn to do when I decided I wanted to shift my belief systems. And I had read several books about like, if you think this way, you can shift this. And I was like, sure you can. But I decided like, you know what? Let's give it a shot. Let's just see what happens. Sure thing. And so I made the commitment to myself that like as I did certain things, I was going to prove to myself if the belief that I was having at the time matched up with now, or did that match up with things before? And I started doing that on a regular basis. And then it just became a part of what I do. Like even now, I have things that still come up from the abuse that I went through. And what's interesting is like the trigger will come up and I'll be like, wait a minute, what? And then I'm like, that's where we went. That's like so 10 years ago. But it's so
Good for
much
you.
easier to like recognize it, realize it, and then
Yeah.
shift and say, okay, but this is the proof that I have. This has happened, this has happened, this has happened, is this has
Mhm.
happened. But what you are saying is so far over here that it's a lie now, right? It might have
Mhm.
been a belief at one time, but it's a lie. And I literally had to do that in order to reprogram how my brain saw things in the world and how I intook information was being able to show proof, which meant I really had to start paying attention to
Yes.
what was going on now and recognize what had been going on before so I could have the differentiators of, yeah, like this isn't adding up. I hear what you're saying, but like I've already done these other pieces.
Mhm. Yeah. Awareness is so key on this journey of development, right? It is a critical piece of the puzzle. And I see a lot of times people will talk about, okay, this is how I've always been. And so I will say, okay, well, how is that working out for you? Is that a problem for you? Is that a problem that you want to work on or shift? For some people, it's not an, a problem enough yet for them to take action on it. For others, it's so crystal clear to them that their thinking is causing, or their beliefs are causing the emotional challenge that they're feeling, and the stress and the frustration and the conflict they're feeling within themselves or with others. That they're like, okay, yes, enough is enough. I'm ready to make a change. I'm done with
Mhm.
this. Uh, there's so many different levels of awareness.
Yes. Yes. And I know that I'm
Mhm,
still growing into things, but it
mhm,
has been very eye-opening. And I think that it also
mhm,
helps create a sense of presence, which I feel like a lot of
mhm,
us are lacking. And I know that from personal experience. I know how stuck I was in the past and like trying to figure out the future to make sure I had all my pieces laid out so there was like no surprises. So I know what it's like to be in that state, but I have to say that being where I'm at now and being able to be so much more present has allowed so much more calmness and
mhm,
the ability to think through situations that arise versus shutting down, which is what I used to do
mhm,
before, right? Or you think worst case scenario, right? So that was super
mhm,
helpful. I have to take us back though to the
mhm,
beginning because I want to know, I
mhm,
know you're in this space. I know you're really great about having these conversations and like teaching people how to understand that like we are one, regardless of what we're
mhm,
doing. Have you always been in that space, or was there a journey in
mhm.
parts of you that you know that you learned that kind of like catapulted you into this space, especially the emotional intelligence? Because I do not think we talk about emotional intelligence enough.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Well, let's be real. Of course, I've been on a journey. Of course. How much time do you have? We could, we could be here for 40 years, right? No, I will summarize. So for a long time, I worked in wellness, and I always knew that I wanted to help people in connecting the dots around wellness. And that's why there's this link for me. But a number of years ago, a couple of things happened. I am a highly emotional person, highly sensitive person, very in tune with my emotions. And for my entire life, prior to probably about 10 years ago, I believed that this was a problem, that this was, it was
Mm,
deemed as unacceptable. It made me less than because I am in tune with my emotions. I'm highly sensitive. It was not a good thing, was the belief. And part of that was what was told to me by people, right? A variety of people. Okay. I went through a number of different, I do a lot of personal development work. I attend a lot of different courses. It is part of who I am to continue to learn about myself, personal development. Like I have an abundance of books. It just makes me so happy to be challenging my thinking and perspectives. I just dig in. Anyways, so I attend a few different conferences and training courses where if you watch TEDx #1, you'll see the moment of real shift for me. Um, a real shift where the leader of that class essentially pointed me out in front of everyone and said, like, you were the worst one in the room. That's what I'll say. So it was a moment of significant shift for me. And uh, I'm still an emotional being when the space allows for me to like really feel my feelings. So if you attended a training course with me, I would be a person who, when I feel my feelings, like you would see it. Now in a coaching environment, like I'm here for that person. It's not about me. It's like
yeah.
not about me at all. So I'm able to be at that state of myself in a very calm, uh, present way. When it is about me and it is about my shifts and it is about my growth, I am so in tune with my emotions that it allows me to process things really quickly and shift really quickly because I don't have my emotions stay stuck inside. I'm like I do leak out of my eyeballs. So And lots of people leak out of their eyeballs when they are processing and when they are shifting, when they are being challenged. So there's been a few moments on the journey where I could definitely point a finger at, okay, those were big TSN turning points for me. Another big TSN turning point for me, and shifting into even things around emotional intelligence. I mean, those also played a part as well, because I started to realize that my emotion is actually my superpower. This is not a bad thing. The fact that I can be logical and have reason and access the wisdom and information that my emotions provide, and I can bring them together in this beautiful synergy. Oh yeah, like enough. I'm tired of people saying that eye leaking, or otherwise known as crying, is weak, or is a problem, or is bad, or whatever label that you want to give it. It is truly a superpower to be able to release those emotions and have them like move through you, right? Instead of just push them to the side, leave them at the door, all of that. There is a time and a place, though, as important to know in emotional intelligence. The other TSN turning point that I can absolutely remember in helping me move towards the work that I'm doing now happened probably about 15 years ago, maybe a bit less, 13 years ago. I was being mentored, and a part of that mentoring was that I was submitting accountability sheets that I would type out with, what had I accomplished that week, right? Real accountability, put the data down on paper. And so I had submitted this to the mentor, and she called me out on the fact that I had written the word needs to 12 times in a page and a half. So talk about control, pressure, stress, right? This need to, yuck, ooh, energy, right? So if you're a person that's listening to this and uses the words need to, I would invite you to look into what that language, the words that are coming out of your mouth, which are indicators of what thoughts you're thinking, how that's impacting your level of stress and overwhelm and pressure and relationships. And I mean, so many things, those simple words. And so, of course, in my less developed, mature state where, I hadn't done much personal development, I had done a bit, but not where I am today, I reacted. I became defensive. I was like, well, I have to, I need to. This is like, right? Like for those watching, like my face gets all like crazy when I say the word need to as well. But that's the energy we feel when those words are coming out of our mouth typically, is this kind of yucky energy. And I was so attached to that as well, that it was a need to thing. And so thankfully she called me out on that, because it caused a ripple effect of reflection in me that has changed me like forever. And it is a lot of the work that I do now, and helping people to recognize that their their beliefs, their attitudes come out through their language and are impacting their level of happiness, their level of calm, their level of presence, right? And so I very rarely now use the word should. Ugh, yuck. So, and I'll catch myself if it happens to pop out of my mouth, and I'm immediately into the reflection of, well, is that true? And who says? Who actually says that that is the case, right? I should be washing the floors. I had a conversation with a client one time, and she goes, well, I really should be washing the floors today. And based on where her goals were, I called baloney. Loving accountability, I called baloney, and just said, okay, well, tell me how that aligns to the goals that you have, because it sounds like a pressure coming from outside of you when you use the word should. Says who? Why now? What is that really the priority? And we went through this dialogue, and I do that quite often with myself now. And I think that's part of why I continue to evolve and have this transition of growth, because I am continuously reflecting on the words that are coming out of my mouth. And I'm not perfect. Let's be real. Nobody's perfect. I still will, if I'm with a group of, some of these sports moms, I might unfortunately fall into an old pattern of speaking. But then I'm like, oh my gosh, I choose to get back on track. I want to get back on track with my language,
Mm-hmm.
with my thinking, right?
Yeah. And I love the understanding of words and how much they play on everything that we do. I did not understand this concept for like the longest time. And it wasn't until I hired a coach and I used try. Try was
Mm.
that was my go-to. I'm going to try to do this. And she said, what does try mean? You're thinking about it. She was like, or you actually doing it? And I was like, well, I mean, I'm trying. And I was like, oh, and she was like, exactly. She was like, when you say try, do you ever realize that you actually get the thing done after? I was like, oh my gosh, no. So try was basically an excuse to say that I was going to do something, but it was my way of like beating around the bush that it probably wasn't going to get done. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I
And you didn't want to
never,
let people down, right?
yeah. Yeah. So I had to remove that word from my vocabulary. And it was, I am working on. And if I'm not working on it, then I don't get to say anything like that. It's in the works or it is on my to-do list, but I've not touched it yet. But I can use working on because I am actively working on it. But try came out because that was my go-to. And I thought that was so weird at the time yet so interesting. And it is weird that, like I really have kind of paid attention to the things that I say, and I will catch myself sometimes mid-sentence and I'm like,
Hmm.
that is something I would have said years ago. That didn't make any sense. And I will literally, like, especially to my kids, because I am working on helping them become adults that I have a lot more emotional intelligence, are connected with who they are, have the boundaries and space to be able to say, yeah, I don't want to do this, or I can't talk to you right now. And so I do that. Like if I catch myself, I'm like, that is not what I meant.
Yeah.
Give me a second. Give me a second. Let me rephrase that. My oldest one and I literally just had a conversation the other day because I got in mom mode and he was wanting to do something. And I was like, I don't think it's a good idea. And he got defensive and I cut right back. And I immediately saw that I like tore into his soul. I felt so bad. My oldest one is 20, but yeah, you could see it, right? And him and I are really close. And so we didn't have a conversation until the next evening. And I was like, okay, we've got to talk about this. Like, you're not talking to me right now, and I don't like it. And we're not going to do this in this household. Like, we're going to own our crap. You own yours, I'll own mine. And he just let loose on me. He was like, do you know what you said? Do you realize how it made me feel? Like, you tore me down. And I was like, oh, okay, let's talk about that. Like, what do you think that I said? And there were some things that he said, and I was like, I didn't actually use those words. And he was like, yes, you did. I said, no, what I said was, and I repeated, I said, but what you took it as was this. I said, so while I'll take ownership that maybe I cut you a little deep and I didn't mean to, I said, I need you to also take ownership that you heard something different because of things that you have not processed yet. Right. And so we had this whole conversation about understanding that, because I know I used to do that as well. Somebody could say something like, hey, this document needs to be correct. And I'd be like, oh, it's crap. Nobody likes it. Well, like I would just, right? Like it's so interesting when you start paying attention
Yep.
to realize that like the words that people use sometimes do not process into the brain. Your brain just veers to the left and makes its own story and then like puts it all together and blows it out of proportion. It is insane how important words are.
And this idea talking about of recognizing when the words that you're saying are not being received in alignment. So there are opportunities to check in on, okay, this is what you said. This is what I heard you say. Am I hearing you right? Am I hearing you correctly? giving the other person the opportunity to re-clarify. I love that you reframe already. It's role modeling that they have the permission to reframe as well, right? When we role model our moments. I also do the like timeout signal. I need to reframe. I need to reword what I want, what I meant. Uh, I really also like that you're saying that you're uh, owning and apologizing, and like these are such good things for all of us to role model in our workplace, in our relationships with our kids or other people, that we're all humans. We're on this human journey, and sometimes we say things we don't mean, and right, and working to repair that, working to bring the communication back together. I love that.
And I think that it brings a level of curiosity as well. And that's something that I talk a lot about, like in my household, a lot, as well as online, is like, if you're going to come at a situation and you're already defensive, or you've already got your guard up and you're like, I'm going to make sure that they don't, well, I said, you can miss the mark completely. I said, so if you can learn to come into a situation and just openly hear what someone has to say, and then ask questions like you were just saying, right? Did I hear you right? Just, I call them questions of curiosity. Lean in with the curiosity, because what I find is that our brains are fantastic at making up stories. Like, I'm sure they could write all kinds of books of things that make zero sense, but they are so good at making up their own stories because they pull pieces from experiences we've had, triggers that we've dealt with, traumas we've been through, and it goes, this is what it is. When in reality, you're sitting in a situation and you're like, that is not what it is. Like, that was a huge thing when my husband and I got together, because I had so many old beliefs and so many issues and triggers and things that I knew were going to eventually come up somewhere in our relationship, right? And so I made a promise to myself that when we got in this relationship, I would lead with asking questions, which is not something I was very good at doing for a really long time. And now I'm like the question queen. So like, I will ask you questions about anything. But what it did help me with was it helped me pick apart what my brain was trying to piece together, and then actually put in the truths in those spaces so that you're not assuming all over the freaking place. Because I think that we do that a lot. I used to do that a lot. It still happens, but I'm able to catch it a lot more than what it used to be. And so when things would happen, or like if my husband said something and he was joking and I took it a different way, I would immediately stop myself. And I'm like, hey, I got to ask you something. It says, this doesn't necessarily have anything to do with you. This is something I'm dealing with, but I need to be able to process it. And I would just ask questions. Like when you said this, and he's like, no, it's not what I meant at all. I was just da 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 da. And I was like, oh, okay. And again, right, it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. It's rebuilding the things that you believe in, the things that your brain pays attention to. It's rewriting those stories so that we have a little bit more sense of clarity versus this cloudy judgment that I feel like we do have. And I especially think that this is important not only in work, but in family settings as well, especially with your children. That was something that I've learned over the last probably 5 years. And while I can't say that my parenting, when they were growing up was the best, the way that I have shifted things now and the ownership that I take, it is such a radical difference in seeing my teenagers and the ways that they do stuff, right? Like my youngest one came home like a week ago and he was just so frustrated and upset about something to do with the sports that he's playing. And he just, let loose up on the stairs. And I was like, whoa, okay. And so I just listened and I was like, look, I can't help you unless you go and have this conversation first, and then we can talk about it. And he was like, I said, why don't you just go take a shower, kind of cool down, and then like we can talk about it afterwards if you want to have a conversation around like what can we do about it. And within a matter of probably 15 minutes, I had 3 text messages on my phone of him explaining and telling me like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to blow up on you, this is what's going on, this is how I'm feeling. Like he just let loose in the text message. And I was like, oh my gosh, how freaking cool is that? Especially considering that they didn't grow up in a home like that. They weren't taught that from a really young age. But because, like you said, right, I'm modeling that now, they now are seeing that like they can do that too.
Yes. And his way of processing is fine, right? His way of processing it and putting it into text, like that's very teenager,
Oh yeah.
right? Right? Like they're not going to pick up the phone. They're not going to necessarily come down and have a dialogue because that's not the world that they live in, right? The text is the fact that he did that is incredible, incredible. And such a huge opportunity because then you get to actually see what are the stories being created in his mind,
Mm-hmm.
and what are the beliefs that maybe are not serving him already that you can help maybe shift and guide towards healthier options. Wow.
Thank
It's
you.
awesome. I'm
It's
like celebrating you.
yeah.
Let's celebrate together. This is so great. It's so
Thank
great.
you. And especially having boys. Like that was a huge one for me when I kind of had the realization several years ago that things needed to shift, that like I am creating young men that fall into the same trap as every other young man I've ever met, right? We don't show emotion, we don't do this, we don't talk about this. And I was like, I cannot allow that to happen. But in order for that not to happen, it means that I also have to shift within me, right? Like it's that monkey see, monkey do. Yeah, that's not how it works. Like I realized that, like I literally had to show what was going on for them to be like, oh, okay,
And that it's
we're
okay to
doing
have these
things.
emotions, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's okay to have emotions. It's okay to process. It's okay to then say, you know what? I'll own that I blew up there, right? That's great. Don't shove it down. Don't hide it. Don't try and deal with it alone. Like let's get these challenges out.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, please don't shove it down. I did that for so many
Hmm.
years. I mean, I caused
Hmm.
myself to have a heart condition. I ended up having
Hmm.
PTSD. Like, I've got some stories on shoving things
Hmm.
down from years and years and years of not
Hmm.
feeling like I had the ability to show emotions. When I was in my abusive space, you couldn't cry because if you cried, it was used against you, right? So you learn to put this tough face on, to put your guard up and hide every bit of emotion so that nobody could pick apart what was going on with you. I get that it was a safety mechanism, and I think that a lot of us have that, whether it's childhood trauma, things that caught us off guard, whatever it is. But I think that being aware of that and learning that you don't always have to have that guard up, that you're not always going to get stabbed in the face because you don't have your
Hmm.
guard up. I think that it teaches us that there's a lot more soft in the world than we realize.
Hmm. And continuing to look for proof of it, right? A lot of times we look for proof of the negative thing. Like let's look for
Mm,
proof of the soft. Look for proof of positive parenting moments. Look for the proof that you actually want to see, and you'll see more of it around you.
yes, yes, yes. Yep, that was another lesson I had to learn.
It's
Amy,
great.
I feel like we're going through my story of life. Like
Right.
I have learned so many things.
Well, key though, like let's look at your language for a second though, that you had to learn. I would invite you that you got to learn. Because now
True.
because you went through it and you learned it, you are on the other side, that you can help people see that there is a light on the other side, that it is possible to learn and it is possible to change. Like what a gift. Now you might want to punch me in the face a little bit, but like because if you're
No.
not there yet to see it as a gift, like awful me for pointing, like you got to get there, right? But
Hmm.
it sounds like you're there, but the language gets to
Yes, yes. So
catch up.
no, I appreciate the reflection. I love that. I invite that openly, like all the time. Please tell me, please catch me, please. I invite it. So thank you, Amy,
Because you're a
for that
gift. I mean, like
reflection.
I love that we're going through your story. You're a gift. It's awesome.
Thank you. Well, I think that you are a gift as well. So just, FYI. But okay, so as we come to a close, I feel like you've given bundles of information and like little specs that people can just start with. But as we come to a close, do you happen to have a quote or a piece of advice you'd like to leave the audience with?
Oh my go-to quote is you may be one person. You may be one person to the world, but to the world you may be I'm getting that wrong. To the world, you are one person, but to one person, you are the world. So
Ooh.
that's one of my, like, that is one of my go-to things is like, you may feel like you're insignificant, but to someone or a few someones or a few more someones, you are their world. And so like we all are impacting other people in our word choices, in our energy, in our attitudes. We're having the ripple whether we think so or not. And so there's an opportunity to recognize that when you begin tapping into your own worthiness, your own sense of enoughness, you are paying attention to things like your well-being and where you are having positive growth, you know, even in those small moments of dialogue with a friend or a sibling or a family member or a coworker, you are rippling out again what's possible. You are showing people around you that growth is possible, change is possible, new levels of calm, peace, awareness, kindness, love are possible.
Oh, that's such a beautiful note to end on. I love your quote, by the way. That is
Too bad I didn't get it
wonderful.
right the first time, but that's okay.
Time's a charm, right?
That's right.
We still got it across. It's fine.
Okay.
Amy, I can't thank you enough for being a part of the podcast today. I feel like you have given so much information in so many areas and so many small places that people can start with.
It was my pleasure to be here.
Oh, thank you. Okay, everybody else out there, I hope you got some amazing takeaways. It really is interesting to sit back and pay attention to your wording and the things that you are speaking to other people and the meanings that are behind those words. So I'm going to challenge you as well, like Amy said, to think about that, to maybe write down some of those things that you were thinking and pay attention to the words that just naturally flow. And then think about that because that is where we start, right? You have to start with being able to notice it in order to make the change. And you can't make the change without that first. So she's over here. She's so happy. Okay. So
Yes, I'm so happy.
we nailed it on the head. So Amy, again, I can't thank you enough for being a part of the podcast today. Thank you so much for sharing your intelligence and your gifts and everything that you have learned on your own journey. And to everybody else out there, until next time, do one thing positive for someone each and every day and see the difference that it makes in your life. So until next time, have a fantastic day. Hello again, and thank you so much for being a part of the podcast today. If you enjoyed this episode and it brought tons of value, we ask that you please share, like, and subscribe. Your support means the world to us and helps us to reach even more inspiring entrepreneurs who can benefit from these powerful conversations. If you haven't already, be sure to leave a review on your favorite podcast platform, as this feedback is an amazing gift that fuels our growth and helps us to continually improve this podcast. Looking for an extra dose of inspiration and empowerment? Then be sure to connect with me on social media. You can find me at The Lotus Effect, where I share valuable resources and tips while sharing my own journey of being an entrepreneur. And if you're interested in learning more about my coaching programs and services, be sure to check out my website at the-lotus-effect.com. Once again, thank you so much for being a part of Real Chat with Kat. Your presence and support makes all the difference. Remember, whether you find yourself in the depths of the mud or on the path of growth, we all have a unique journey. And just like the lotus, some of us start in the dirtiest of mud, yet as we rise and grow, we blossom into something beautiful, unique, and truly one of a kind. To all of my visionaries out there, keep rising and growing as you create your own Lotus Effect.